we find our light in the dark and to really face it and to go all the way in and to claim radical responsibility for the co-creation of our own lives. It's all up to us when we're unconscious of our behaviors, self-limiting beliefs, and how that stays with us until we really look at it to heal it. And we have to feel it to heal it.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 619 with guest Jessica Zweig.
Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here with me during this hot summer. Good Lord, it has been a hot one, hasn't it? I've had such a fun summer. Probably more on that later. I cannot get into details right now. But anyway, we have such a fun guest on today. I had such a great conversation with Jessica Zweig. I swear, I just feel like I have been attracting the best guests. So thank you to all of you who DM me on Instagram, who post the show, who tell your friends about it. You, the real MVP. I appreciate that so much. Also, my dog really wants to play. So I'm sorry if you can hear her whining in the background. We just were outside. Please don't judge me and think I'm a bad dog owner and that I don't play with her and I just let her fend for herself. No. We just got done playing outside and I thought it was enough, but apparently it wasn't. So you might hear her panting and whimpering in the background. Okay. I just wanted to tell you that I do have some openings for private coaching this coming fall. Fall is a lot of times a great time of year for people to jump on board for private coaching because Astrid, I'm not editing this out. I'm sorry. This is real life, you guys. Fall can feel like a good time. Please hold. As I was saying, fall can feel like a good time to get started on new goals, to get really clear on what it is that you want more of in your life, what you want less of, learning new skills on how to have hard conversations, what's next for you in your career, those types of big life stuff. That's where I come in. This has just gotten embarrassing. I'm going to shift gears and tell you about our guest today. Oh my gosh. You would think that I would be better at this, having this be our 619th episode. Jessica Zweig has been described as a voice of her time by Marianne Williamson and a personal branding expert by Forbes. Her first book was the #1 bestseller, Be, a no bullshit guide to increasing your self-worth and your net worth by simply being yourself. Her forthcoming release, The Light Work, Reclaim Your Feminine Power, Live Your Cosmic Truth, and Illuminate the World, hits shelves August 2024. Host of top-ranked podcast, The Spiritual Hustler, Zweig is a sought-after speaker for companies like Google and Nike, a leader of the global community of spiritual women, and hosts sold-out retreats on business, branding, and spirituality across the world. So without further ado, here is Jessica. Jessica, thank you so much for being here.
Andrea, thank you for having me. I told you you've been my girl crush for like over a decade. So this is very full circle for me to be here.
Keep telling me.
It's true. It's true.
I appreciate that. No, it does make me happy to know that I've inspired people to, write books and do this work. And so I appreciate that so much. I'm excited to talk about your book. And I love everything about this book. The cover is amazing. Just
Thank you.
They really knocked it out of the park. And it's called The Light Work, Reclaim Your Feminine Power, Live Your Cosmic Truth, and Illuminate the World. I know how hard subtitles are.
Girl, that was like 20 options, went back and forth for like 6 months, finally landed on that one.
It's really great. It says a lot. And I'm excited to talk about this for my audience because before we started recording, I was telling you that my audience tends to struggle with anything embodiment related or sometimes, spiritual work, feeling their feelings, identifying their feelings, processing things. And that's what a lot of this book is, correct? Can you kind of just give us like a brief overview of the work?
Yeah, for sure. And I relate to those women listening because that was me for most of my life until I couldn't sustain that anymore and life kind of brought me to my knees. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business at 26 and failed my first company after running it for 7 years, was left in a lot of credit card debt, literally went broke and licked my wounds in corporate America for 2 years and then came back out to start a second company like a lunatic. And so
Couldn't get
entrepreneurs, that
enough.
can be, yes, exactly. I ran a company called the Simply Be Agency for 7 years. I just sold my company about 6 months ago, which was kind of a crazy experience. But that business for those 7 years was, my life, my identity, completely hooked on this dopamine hit of success and growth and grind.
It's easy to have happen.
It is absolutely, and especially for me, like going broke and having actual real scarcity in my life left a trauma response in my body that I was completely unaware of. And all of a sudden, I started the second company, took off like a rocket ship, and I was making all this money and I was finally in abundance. And it became super validating. And I really look back on that chapter of my life and see how hard I was pushing my body. Yes, because I was loving what I was doing, but I also didn't want to die. Like there was a survival mechanism that was really turned on. And so what happened in the winter of 22, which wasn't that long ago, but about 2.5 years ago, I broke, was diagnosed with situational depression due to complete physical, mental, and emotional, spiritual, creative burnout. Couldn't function, couldn't leave my house, couldn't shower, couldn't socialize for a few months, and got some help, went through some medication protocols, which I talk about in the book, and kind of came right back into the hamster wheel because I had this big business that I had no choice but to uphold. And it wasn't until I went to Egypt. I have a long through line throughout the book about that trip. I've traveled the world. I've been to 35 countries, Andrea, but nothing was like that country. Like it totally altered my life. And I realized in that experience that my body as a woman was designed to do life differently than I was doing it most of my career until I was 40, most of my life. And it really dawned on me how intentional I had to be with my pace, how to really learn to trust my feminine power, which is in the subtitle, coming home to my cosmic truth that joy is my birthright and that I don't have to sacrifice and kill myself to deserve it. And I came home from that trip and I like to say that I have been saying quite often that I died in Egypt. The version of me that stepped onto that plane that had built all of these beautiful things, thinking that in order to get there, she had to do it in a frankly toxic patriarchal paradigm.
Yeah.
To come back. Yep. And I healed my entire life after that trip, got the book deal in January, 2 months after that trip, and channeled this book in 3 months, healed my nervous system, got in touch with my big ass feelings, and ended up selling the company, which was a very serendipitous timing. But I'm really on a mission with this book, to say to women, we find our light in the dark. And to really face it and to go all the way in and to claim radical responsibility for the co-creation of our own lives. We are totally, it's all up to us. And when we're unconscious of our behavior, self-limiting beliefs due to everything from our family trauma to our sister wounds from friendships to money scarcity to heartbreak and love and romantic relationships, and how that stays with us until we really look at it to heal it. And we have to feel it to heal it. Being a light worker isn't about spiritual bypass, love and light, gratitude is the attitude, everything happens for a reason kind of bullshit. It's really facing your shadows and embracing the polarities of this human experience. And I think women who are career oriented, professionally driven, are especially going to relate to it because I think that's most of us.
Yeah.
And even though my experience is unique, there's a lot of common threads we all face as women today.
Yeah.
And I wanted to write a guidebook for that.
I love everything about that. And I want to point to something you said at the very end there about, career driven women. I think even the women listening who, maybe they're not in like a quote unquote corporate job, but they're working some kind of 9 to 5, or even like the stay at home mothers, like you're running some kind of team.
Oh, totally. They're the CEOs of the world. That's the hardest job.
And I think that you can still get kind of caught in this spiral of, like you were mentioning, it's just like and it's the water we all drink, like growing up here in the Western world. I know I have a lot of listeners in Canada and other countries besides the States, but it's like the culture of, the rugged individualism and like you can do it and pick yourself up and that it's just not sustainable at all for any of us, regardless of your career. And so one of the things I like is I love a book broken up into parts, and yours is. And from what I understand it starts with, I like that it's like goes dawn, inner light, outer light, future light. So can you start with dawn? Like, how do you explain that, and why do we start there?
Yeah. Oh, I love this. You notice, I mean, of course, because you're an author too, like the structuring of a book
yes,
is
matters.
So much fun, and it matters. Mm-hmm. The dawn is really the preface, the opening into saying, when I came back from Egypt, everyone was like, how was it? And the only statement I could say was, I am new. And that's the title of the preface of really taking people into my true dawn, my awakening. Mm-hmm. Frankly, this book has a little bit of mention of the Pleiadians, which is a extraterrestrial like star family. That this book has some woo-woo stuff in it, but I make it super grounded, I promise, and accessible. And it's not here to convince you to believe in aliens if you don't believe in them. But one of the most pivotal works that I came across years ago was a book by Barbara Marciniak, who wrote this book called Bringers of the Dawn. It's all about the return of light onto this planet. And so in Dawn, I talk about my return, my reclamation of my light in my darkest chapter. I talk about the dark. I say, but first a word about the dark. That's one of my favorite moments in the book where I say, this is not here to tell you to just live in the light. Like we have to go into the dark, mucky, shameful, guilty, heartbroken, failed, broken pieces of ourselves to claim our full identity as the light worker. I have something called the language of light, which is a glossary of terms, because I speak about the 3D, the 5D, the matrix, starseeds, transcendence, immanence, and I want the reader to stay focused on the book, not like leave when I say those terms. So I define what they mean at the beginning. And then inner light, outer light, and future light was very intentional because I believe that in order for us to claim our light, we have to go within. We have to build that relationship with ourselves and get in touch with our emotions, get in touch with our personal power, learn how to love and be comfortable and safe in our bodies, and find our own definition of source, of spirit, of purpose. And then outer light, I say, where is your light? Okay, you get all aligned with those things within yourself. Great. Where do those things get tested? In relationships with other people. So outer light is divided into a section on family, love, friendships, and money. And then future light, sort of to nod to the subtitle of Illuminating the World. You've alchemized, you've done your healing, you've claimed radical responsibility for who you are and how you show up in the world. Now, how do you use this newfound information and self-awareness to make the world a better place, to really impact the future? Because I believe that what we do now, whether we're running a family or we're running a team or we're running a company, how we show up right now in this timeline is going to reverberate into generations to come after us. And we have to be conscious of how we treat each other, the planet, how we treat other women, how to step forward in our full, what I call light identity to shine unapologetically, to give other women the permission to take up space too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the book is structured. And at the very end, the last thing I'll say is a whole section called the Lightworker Resource Guide. And I have a playlist, I have tools, I have an invocation, I have a reader's, if you want to read the book in community, I have a guide on how to do that. So it's a very multifaceted book, a very full, comprehensive guidebook on what it means to be a light worker today.
I thank you for that overview. And we're going to take a quick ad break. And when we get back, I want to ask you more about the dark. So we'll be right back. Today's podcast is sponsored by MIDI Health. If you're like me, a woman over 40 dealing with things like hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, mood swings, vaginal dryness, or weight gain, you don't have to accept it as just another part of aging. These symptoms can be linked to hormonal changes during perimenopause and menopause. And the experts at MIDI Health understand what you're going through and know how to assist. MIDI clinicians specialize in menopause care, offering safe, effective, FDA-approved treatments. And MIDI care isn't covered by insurance, which is amazing. You don't have to push through this alone. Schedule a virtual visit to discuss your symptoms and health history in detail. You'll leave feeling heard and with a plan to start feeling so much better. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com, joinmidi.com. Talk about stressful when you get a surprise bill and your paycheck isn't coming for another week. Life doesn't happen bi-weekly, so why should payday? The money you earn can be in your hands today with Earnin. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for school supplies or new school clothes for the kids, or even a last-minute weekend away. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability and security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN, in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast when you sign up. It'll really help the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location, daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. I've taken many classes with Masterclass on different topics by some of my favorite instructors like Chris Voss, Diane von Furstenberg, and Adam Grant. There's some amazing personal growth classes there too, like Small Habits That Make a Big Impact on Your Life by James Clear, Where Does Courage Come From by Sarah Blakely, and Curb the Self-Affirmations by Daniel Pink. Lately, I was curious about Emily Morse's class. I follow her on Instagram, Sex with Emily. So I took her class, Sex and Communication, and I especially loved her section on asking for what you want, which can be tricky because it involves vulnerability and sex. These classes really make a difference. 88% of members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. Plus, every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass. Right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/Andrea. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/Andrea. Masterclass.com/Andrea. In the beginning of the explanation of the book, you were talking about, how you do mention the dark, and the way I like it is I like it kind of like a candy cane, like the light and dark. Like I feel like you have to, if you can't just pretend the dark isn't there, or like you said, like bypass it. How do you work with people in that? Is it sort of like shadow work? Can you say more about the darker work?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'll start with my story of the dark. We've all been through heavy, dark things. Mm-hmm. That trip to Egypt really culminated. I mean, I wanted to burn my business down. I wanted to get a divorce. I wanted to move cities. Like I call the rage against the machine called my life when I stepped onto that plane to Cairo. So we're halfway through the trip. We go to this temple. It's called Kom Ombo, and it's the temple of neutrality. And they say that if there's like two sides to this temple, the light side and the dark side, and if you stand in the center, you can experience pure neutrality, which sounds always to me like the best gift, like the experience of neutrality. So I went to this center of the temple by myself and I put one hand out to the right where the dark was. And I felt into this and all of these feelings of hatred and rage and jealousy and shame, like from the past year, my employees breaking my heart, running a big business, having absolutely no levity and joy, feeling super resentful towards my parents for the things I inherited from them, my hypervigilance, my perfectionism, my obsession with validation and achievement. Like I just felt it all. And just by putting my hand out to the right. Then I put my hand out to the left and all I saw was my little girl playing in her room, just innocence and joy. So long story short, I went back to this boat. We were on the Nile River. We had a little balcony peering off of the room and I wrote down all of that dark shit that I had felt in the temple. And I was like, I'm going to rip it up and throw it in the river. I'm just going to release it all. I'm going to say goodbye to it. And I did just that. And I was super proud of myself. And I sat back down and I closed my eyes and I heard a higher voice. And I write about this in the book. And it said to me, it was my higher self talking to me. It said, Jessica, these are not the pieces of you to rip up and discard. These are the pieces of you to learn how to love. And so to answer your question, Andrea, because it's such a big question about the shadow work, you know, they're the parts of us that are unhealed and untended to because we've neglected them, because we haven't looked at them. And ultimately we haven't learned to embrace them and love them. And through the Palladian perspective, back to the aliens, they say that light is information and darkness is lack of information. They don't say dark is love, light is love, and dark is evil. And when we're unconscious of our darkness, it's when it actually takes hold over us. And so bringing the light, turning on the light switch and just simply looking at it and facing it and understanding that it's a critical piece of us, that's power.
Yeah.
That's when we become, I believe, truly integrated over time of doing this work that makes us authentic. And when we're authentic, we're on top, we're magnetic. I actually believe the most authentic people are the ones that, you know, see out in the world like, this is me, take it or leave it. They magnetize and they repel, and that's just perfect. And I think we have to really go in, not around, when it comes to shadow work. And typically you need, you know, a coach, a guide, a therapist, a book, maybe a trip to Egypt to reveal it. But you've got to feel it and face it and learn how to love it. And that was a big unlock for me.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. It made me think of, I knew where it was going as soon as you said, like, I'm going to release it. And I was like, oh, I know where this is headed. I wish it was that easy.
Right. Exactly. I wish it was that easy. Wouldn't that be, all of our lives would be so changed.
So changed. I remember, so I started blogging like in 07, 08. And one of the first things I started writing about publicly that was really vulnerable for me was I was writing about my eating disorder. And I realized this took me a couple of years of writing about it to realize that I was looking at that time in my life and when I was symptomatic with such shame and really harboring resentment to the young woman that I was when I was deep in these symptoms. And I mean, honestly, it just dawned on me one day. I think I was reading back some of my blog posts and I could sense this almost hatred for my former self and like wanting to run away from that person and be this better person, especially like as I was kind of becoming more and more of like a public figure. I'm using air quotes over here. And I thought to myself, like, I don't think that's the way to do this, you know, like I need to, this was like right around the time I was just learning even what the concept of self-compassion was. Like I had never heard of that before until I went to coaching school. I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so it was then that I started to learn to have compassion for these parts of myself, because like what you talked about, in what your darkness looks like it is parts of us that are afraid, that are ashamed, that want to hide, that feel like we don't belong or that we might not belong, that people won't love us. And
Right.
and that's part of the human experience.
It is.
We all have it. And I think the more that we are ashamed of that, ashamed of our shame, the more we try to hide it, it just feeds on that. And
Yeah.
I do want to say, I want to acknowledge that it can be some of the hardest work that you will do. Like some of the most vulnerable work that you will do is to admit it, to talk about it, even if it's with your therapist or your partner or trusted friend. But that I have realized is the key to unlocking the
Mm.
light, like you were saying. And just,
Yeah.
it's a very spiritual experience to get to that place where you can turn towards that. This is honestly why I you guys aren't on video and you can't see, but I have a picture of my, it's my senior picture. It was in my dad's house, and I took it when he passed away, and it's still in a frame, and it's in my room because, I was a 17-year-old girl. I had a really hard year that year. I had an abortion. My
Mm.
parents split up. It was a rough year. And I have that there because this work that I do today as a 49-year-old woman is for that 17-year-old girl,
Yes.
is for her.
Yes. This is so freaking relevant to what I'm going through currently right now. I wrote this book called The Light Work, and I'm like, just because I wrote this book doesn't mean that I'm always in the light.
Sure.
A lot of dark things are, I'm reckoning with right now. And you say that's the key to kind of unlock it. That's why there's a literal key on
A
the
key on
cover.
the cover. Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And I have a tattoo of a key on my heart. Like keys are very significant to me, but I think that that's what you just said about your 17-year-old girl. Like we have all of these past versions of ourselves,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to our little girl, our teenage girl, and here we are in our adult woman. We have such a responsibility, I believe, to really take care of her and go back and protect her and alchemize her and integrate her and show her she's safe, and to know that she would be so proud of us. And I actually threw my former self a funeral a couple months ago. The girl that built the agency, that girl that came from that unhealed, I want to make my dad proud of me
Mhm.
kind of inner flame burning, churning reason why my ambition was just so all consuming. And it left me on my knees. And I said in the book, I bless that girl. I love that girl. I thank that girl. And I've released that girl. And then the beginning of the year, I went to Chicago. I'm currently in Nashville, and that girl came back like a ghost. I was there for a couple days for work, and I felt all of this scarcity, all of this anxiety, all of this overwhelm. My heart was racing. I couldn't sleep. I was like, wait, what the fuck? This girl, I let her go.
I
She died in
buried you.
Egypt.
Yeah.
I
I honored
buried
you.
you. Right. And she came back like a ghost, and she's like
Mm.
haunting me. And so I actually did a whole podcast on my show, The Spiritual Hustler, why you need to throw your former self a funeral.
Mhm.
And I basically walked through what I did. It was a really powerful night. I had a fire pit in my backyard. I lit this fire. I put on a dress that I used to wear all the time in that chapter of my life. And I got out a pen and I got out my journal and I just channeled and I let her speak through me and
Yeah. I was going
just
to ask
say,
you, what do you think she was trying to tell you?
this is what she said to me. She said to me, you talk about me with so much reference to the pain that I experienced, that I caused you, that I caused us. I don't want you to remember me for that. I want you to remember me for all the beauty that I created, all of the things that I worked so hard to get you to. I want to
Mhm.
be remembered for that and how
Yeah.
much
Acknowledged.
acknowledgement. And I let her pour through me. I cried so hard. It was one of the most beautiful practices of my life. And I took the paper, I took off that dress, I put on different clothes, and I went out to the fire and I burned the dress and I burned the papers and I danced around the
Mhm.
fire like a wild woman. The next morning, I took the ashes from the fire and I put them into a bed of flowers on my property to return her, to alchemize that and to bless her. And I don't consider her my ghost anymore. She's my angel. She's on my team now.
Yeah.
We have to not negate, all the pieces and parts of ourselves and identities. They're 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 for our highest evolution, and we have to love and honor them instead of suppress them, delete them, ignore them. And I love that you have a picture of that 17-year-old girl behind you, Andrea. She'd be so proud of you. She needs you as much as you need her. And I think to do this kind of work, it is exactly what you said, some of the most spiritual, vulnerable, but I think necessary work we have to do at this time. So many of us have had trauma and pain, and we just skirt over it and keep living. And then the patterns keep repeating.
They sure do. I hate that we have to take an ad break, but we do. And we'll be right back because we're not done with this part of the conversation. We'll be right back.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist, and I'm an author of the book, How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.
Oh, hey, everybody. It's us, Blair and Molly, your old pals from Toddler Purgatory. Two moms who are also actors, who are also creative beings, who sometimes feel stuck. And this is our new podcast, Unsticking It with Blair and Molly. What happens when your creative spark just seems to disappear? Gone. Poof. Bye. See ya. What happens when life gets in the way of your creativity instead of nourishing it? That's what happened to Molly and me. We felt like the thing that drove us creatively stopped working, and impending doom had in fact impended. Totally. So we decided to do something about it. And that was steal ideas about getting unstuck from the most creative people we can find. We talk to guests about how to break through the mucky, gluey, sticky wall that can get between you and your creativity. We hear about their journeys, their successes, their challenges, and even their bougie coffee shop orders. And we're not just talking Bob Ross type paint on paper artists here, though we talk to them too. We're talking to actors, creative directors, dancers, and people who are working hard to be their best creative selves in a world that can sometimes feel real uncreative. We all have something to teach each other, so let's steal their ideas together. Join us, won't you, as we deep dive into how to unstick ourselves from the life gunk that can get in the way of our creative freedom. Pandemics, school calendars, world events, lack of sleep. Oh, get out of their life gunk. And let's get back to your best creative self. Subscribe to Unsticking It with Blair and Molly. You're not going to want to miss an episode. Unsticking It with Blair and Molly, because sometimes life sucks. Unsticking it.
Okay, I love that the story about your holy ghost that came back,
Yeah,
and
Holy Ghost.
There's a poem by, I think it's Nikita Gill. And of course, I can't remember it right now. And if I had more time, I would look for it, but I will try to get it for the show notes. I love her work. And and I'm going to paraphrase, but she talks in this poem about, I hope you get to meet all of the former versions of yourself and that you can lay flowers in the path as she makes her way home to you. And I'm like,
Oh, that's good. I have the full body chills.
and it is so much better the way she says it because she's a beautiful poet and the way she puts the words together. I'll try my best to, and I'll send it to you on Instagram and put it in the show notes. But, what I would love to do, and I'm sure that AI is going to make this easy for us within the next few years, is create some kind of visual, whether it's just a picture or, which I don't think would be that hard with Photoshop, but like a video of like former versions of myself with my current self. Like that would, like, even just thinking about it makes me cry. Like, because I think that, and also kind of side note, and I've talked about this a little bit on I have to be careful the way I talk about it for her privacy, but I have a 14-year-old daughter and I know you have a daughter too. And I think I think I'm so lucky in this way to have a daughter because she is showing me my own stuff like when I was 14. And I'm like, oh, and I get triggered and then I have to like navigate. I'm like, is this my stuff or is this like parenting stuff? And also like trying to be the kind of woman that I needed at that age and that I needed as a teenager, aside from my own relationship with my mother and things like that. But I mean, having just children in general, regardless of their gender, is a huge spiritual journey that people take. But also I do think that there is, I say all this to acknowledge and encourage you listeners that there is really something to be said for doing work around your former selves, especially the former selves that you have any shame around, of the decisions that you made, the behaviors that you had, whether they were poor coping mechanisms, having poor boundaries, conversations that you never had, things like that. And it's just, I have found coming home, if you will, or, profound healing in forgiving myself for my past behaviors, forgiving myself for being desperate for love and also like not treating people the way that they deserve to be. So many things, things that we do as humans. And I love that you referred to that as a ghost, and then now she's your angel. Cause I think if we pay attention enough, which I know a lot of people listening do, because they're into personal development work, we will see our former ghosts. They will show up, and that will point you to the work that you need to do.
Absolutely. You can only avoid that for so long. It does catch up to you. And what you just shared, by the way, I love it. Like, you have been, desperate for love and not treating people perfectly. Like, we all can relate to that. I can relate to that. And I have really, it's funny, you get the process of writing books and you send it off for a few months and then it comes back a few months later. It's like touch and go with the manuscript. And I finally get the advanced reader copy, hard copy in the mail. And this was about a month ago, and I started reading it. I was like, oh yay, my book is here. I can't wait to read it in the flesh. And I started like heart palpitations, like about to throw up. Cause I'm like, what you just shared in my own version of my story shared all the darkest shit about my life. I got really clear after talking to my astrologist, my therapist, about it, because I was freaking out that I had decided to really publish this to the world. Like, the people I don't even know are going to read this about my life. My astrologist said to me, Jessica, this is not about you. It's your job now to just get out of the way. You were the channel. You were the vessel. This message came through. It's not for you. Listening to conversations like this and doing your own work, like committing to really loving those pieces of yourself and showing up, whether that's just in conversation or in your community or on a podcast or becoming, an author and writing about it, and showing up, doing the work, doing the light work, doing your own healing. You're healing the world. Like, it's such a huge, I believe, moment in history where humanity has these kinds of tools and has these kinds of conversations out loud, and communities and coaches. Our parents didn't have this. Their parents' parents didn't have this. Their parents' definitely didn't have this. And we're so blessed in a way to have these gifts and tools that it's not almost, I believe it's our responsibility to heal, to do this work so that we create this pebble in a pond ripple effect of what you're talking about, your 14-year-old daughter. What a human being and a young adult and into an adult she will be, because Andrea Owen is her mother. Like, I get super jazzed about the future when I think about that. And just to not take for granted your role here, no matter what you do, doing this work is your job.
Yeah. And I try to remind people of that, listening, who like, it's like, if you're listening to this, and I know I'm not the only, this isn't the only personal growth podcast, women's empowerment podcast that they listen to. And I see you've grabbed onto the calling.
Yes.
You did.
Yes.
And trust me, like, I have moments too where I shake my fist at the sky and I'm like, could I have just remained unconscious my whole life? Like, it would have been so much easier, but I don't really want that. I just get tired sometimes. And
Amen.
I just don't think it's everyone's destiny. Like, I get that question a lot. Like, how do I bring my partner on board? How do I bring my sister on board? They're just not interested. And I'm like, it is not their destiny. It is just your job to lead by example,
right?
And, plant seeds where it feels appropriate, but just not push it. Like, you can't prescribe personal growth. Like, it doesn't work that way.
And everyone's on their own journey and their own timeline. Part of this path, I think, of doing personal growth requires a lot of grace.
So much
for yourself, but for other people too. I mean, I got back from Egypt after I died and literally had an identity death, life altering, life changing experience. And I'm married, and I came home and my husband was like, where did my wife go? And we've fought almost every day for 2 months and almost split up because it was so intense, because I had this expectation, I think unconsciously, that he would catch up with me.
Yeah.
That he had to, in order for it to work. And we have a great couples coach. We called on her many times during those few months in emergency sessions and worked through it, thankfully. But I think of my husband, who is, my greatest spiritual teacher, because that's what relationships do. And we've been on very different timelines and chapters of our own growth. And I learned a while ago that I can't tell him how to grow or when to grow. I have to just simply live my own light, be the example in action of growth and what it looks like when you grow. And people can choose to follow their own path or not. And that's also part of the human experience. And the light work. The operative word is work.
Yes. Well, I've loved this conversation, and it doesn't happen all that often where I get verklempt. So I thank you for that. And again, it's the light work, reclaim your feminine power, live your cosmic truth, and illuminate the world. It just, if anyone's listening to this in real time, it just came out yesterday. And tell everyone where to go. Do you have like freebies going on? Like, how can people get more of you, including the book?
Totally. So thank you for having me, by the way. You're just a badass,
pleasure.
and I love you. This was so much fun. So you can go to thelightworkbook.com. It's the title, thelightworkbook.com. And if you order it now, you get about $3,000 worth of pre-order bonuses. You also, if you're listening to this in real time, at least tomorrow, August 8th, you get a ticket to my live stream virtual event with Michael Beckwith, Koya Webb, Daniel Page, some of the most amazing luminary spiritual voices of today. We're doing a Lionsgate celebration, since tomorrow is August 8th, 8/8, and it's 2024. So it's equals 8. So it's 888. It's a very auspicious day for manifestation, setting intentions, calling in a new consciousness, getting super clear. I really believe that this event is going to be one of those events where people look back on it and be like, that's when things started to really change for me. It's going to be really powerful. So you get a ticket to that if you buy the book at thelightworkbook.com.
Okay. Those links will be in the show notes, of course, as always. And I appreciate your time, Jessica. And of course, listeners, I appreciate your time. I know that it is very precious. I'm grateful that you choose to spend it with me and my guests. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey listeners, if you work for a company that does professional development, did you know that I offer leadership training, more specifically empathy and assertiveness and how it makes stronger teams? You can see more on my speaking page at andreaowen.com/speaking, where there's also a contact button there so you can fill out that form and let's chat.
Hello, you sentient ball of stardust. My name is Casey Davis. I'm a therapist and I'm an author of the book How to Keep House While Drowning, where I talk about ways to make it a little bit easier to take care of yourself when you're overwhelmed, stressed, have mental health issues, physical health issues, or maybe you're just in a hard season of life. Maybe you're looking for a place that you can come and listen to some practical advice. This is a podcast for all of the self-help rejects. We're going to talk about skills for survival and self-kindness. And I'm going to leave the pop psychology at the door. I promise not to tell you to meditate or to journal. We're just going to give you some really insightful conversations with hopefully some practical advice. So I don't believe you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I don't want you to just try harder, and I don't believe that laziness exists. So join me over on Struggle Care, where we can find compassionate solutions that help us function a little bit better.